Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, yesterday saw almost 1,000 troops deployed on our streets to backfill for the police, while the terror threat level is raised to critical following the Manchester bombing. That means an attack may be imminent. Troops will be used to guard important buildings, so the Army was drafted into Parliament. We also saw members of the Army stationed in Whitehall, Downing Street and at Buckingham Palace. The head of the Metropolitan Police, the new head, Cressida Dick, said having soldiers to do these patrols helped to free up the police at this difficult time.
Whilst we're at critical and there is the possibility of a further attack, we want to be able to support the public as best we can and to protect them as best we can, and we believe we need more armed officers on the streets. So putting military colleagues on what I would call static posts, in this case Palace of Westminster, allows us to put police officers with firearms in greater numbers out on the streets of the whole UK.
That's the new head of the Metropolitan Police, Britain's most important police chief. We're joined now by Steve White, chair of the Police Federation. It's the Staff Association for Police Constables, Sergeants and Inspectors. This deployment of armed personnel, of the military on our streets, is that anything more than symbolic?
Well, I never thought that I would see the day, to be perfectly frank, and I think we've got to recognise that whilst these events are fast-moving, the brilliant response of the emergency services and the police service as a whole has been second to none. However, and of course the support of our military colleagues are clearly needed. That they're clearly needed because, unfortunately, in a situation such as this, that the current police service is not structured to deal with it in a prolonged way. Of course, what happened on Monday night, the response by officers in Greater Manchester, as happened on the 22nd of March, has been absolutely superb. But this is about a sustained level of threat. And by virtue of us saying that armed military are having to replace armed police officers in order to release that resource, clearly sends a concerning message. I
understand that, but I still do wonder if it's anything more than symbolic. Let's put the picture up and see this, because as you say, it is quite a remarkable picture to see. If we can just get it up on the screen, to see our police officers going down the streets with armed soldiers as well. We haven't seemed to be able to get the picture up there. Yeah, there we have it. So it's worth dwelling on that, to see in Britain in the summer of 2017. But it's only, as I understand it, several hundred. The French, something that I've followed and know well, the French are deploying 10,000 troops a day across France. You see them everywhere you go, not just in Paris. I left from a provincial TGV train station recently. 4 well-armed soldiers going up and down the station before we got onto the train. We're not at that level yet, which is why, or anywhere near it, which is why I just suggest it seems to be more symbolic than of any real practical impact.
Well, it provides a practical impact because it releases officers in order to be available should something else happen. But I think that the main difference with policing in the UK and policing abroad is about this policing by consent model, and it's about embedding the police service within local communities, which is so vitally important. That is worth many, many, many soldiers and military personnel on the streets. And I think the lesson that's got to be learned from these awful incidents has got to be armed police officers being deployed are not going to prevent further attacks. They're going to be able to respond to the attack. What we've got to concentrate on is how we prevent it in the first place. And the first point of policing and a police constable is the prevention of crime in the first place. And it's making sure that we invest the time and the energy and the resources and the specialisms to get into the communities, those hard-to-reach areas, so that this 22-year-old who carried out this awful atrocity is known to local people. Well, local people have trust and confidence to be able to.
But he was. I mean, that even with the cut in police numbers, and I know you've been very concerned about that. Salman Abdelli was known to the police. Friends reported him to the anti-terrorism hotline 5 years ago. He was flying a flag that looked like an ISIS symbol from his window. It had Arabic writing on it. He was loudly repeating prayers and the Quran on the streets. People thought that strange. He was reported. I mean, it wasn't a lack of police numbers. There's a failure somewhere, which is not to do with numbers here.
Well, no, don't forget that actually what's happened over the past 5 years is the cut in police numbers. Chief constables have been having to make very difficult decisions. That's involved a cut in police firearms capability and certainly embedded neighbourhood policing. This isn't about having police officers responding to calls. This is about having embedded neighbourhood policing, knowing your communities, knowing who should be there, asking the questions, why hasn't this person been seen? All of that kind of stuff is very, very difficult to measure, of course, in terms of outcomes and KPIs and all this kind of stuff.
We've got performance indicators.
Well, yeah, which we're not supposed to have anymore, but we sort of still do. But it's easy to measure some things. It's very difficult to measure the value of neighbourhood policing and increasing that level of confidence. And we've got to get back to that. And we've got to make sure that the resources are there. I predicted 2 years ago that we would end up seeing a paramilitary style of policing, which if that's what the public wants, that's what we can provide. And the image that you had on the screen there is just, you know, the start potentially of that.
It's a potential, though. It hasn't happened.
It is potential. We've got an opportunity now.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not here to talk about politics. I'm here to talk about policing, and I'm here to ask every politician to raise the debate, ask the public what they want from their police service, and I think what they would like to see are more police officers and less military on the streets.
All right, just very brief comment, John. We haven't got much time.
I would ask you, we brought in community policing, and what happened there? Community talks to their own people and they pass it on to the police. If you go and tell a police constable or you tell a soldier, that prevents the community telling you what's going on, whether it's the black flag. And we lost thousands of the community policing. I think that's important. When you mean community policing, you might mean a policeman-made community, but there is this gulf between the police and indeed the public. The community police used to fill it in, and people trusted them to pass on the information to the authorities.
Right.
This is becoming increasingly clear. They don't tell anybody.
We need to end it there, but we thank you for coming on. This story obviously isn't going to go away.